Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today I'm going to explain signal flow on a really basic level and simplify it for you. Let's hop straight into the DAW. So I found this chart that explains the Pro Tools signal flow. If you're geeky, you'll understand this chart. Basically, this is just showing you the sequence of events that happens with sound. So for example, in the beginning, let me zoom all the way in. In the beginning, if you follow me in the top left here, you'll see that audio is on a track. So this is the audio imported into Pro Tools at this point. Now, this next stage, we have what's called elastic audio processing. If you do like time stretch type stuff, this is where it would occur, is right after you add that audio into the screen. Nextly, we have what's called clip gain. This is where you turn up the volume using these little things right here. This is called clip gain. So basically, if I want to turn stuff up or down quickly, I can turn the vocal up using clip gain, just like that. Okay, so it's a really fast way to turn stuff up and down for different parts of the song, especially when you have different parts of your vocal. Sometimes you want the vocal to be louder in certain parts, quieter in other parts, but you don't want to have to create a whole nother track. So what you'll do is you'll just slice it and then turn a section down and then turn a section. Okay, so that's how it works. That's what clip gain is for the most part. Now it says after that point, we have the track input and it goes into this processing. These are called inserts. These are plugins we add, these are reverbs, delays, EQs, compression, whatever. And all those things work top to bottom. Okay, so whatever's at the top of your chain is how the signal starts. Whatever's at the bottom is last in the chains. When we say chain, we're referring to the sequence of events that happens. I'll show you what this sounds like because right now it's just a diagram. It doesn't make sense because you're just looking at it. We're going to get into what that sounds like. And then each insert can host a plugin. And here's where, people might get confused. Basically, Pre-Fader just makes it so that it bypasses all the stuff on the left side. So we'll bypass the volume fader, the panning, the solo button, and it will go straight to the mix bus, okay, on the output. Okay, but if you don't want it to do all that, then you can just have it go as a regular send, which, okay, has a volume control, panning, solo, and you can send the signal somewhere else. This looks more complicated than what it is. Let's just simplify it. So when I have tracks right here, let's say I want the 808 to have more saturation. Okay, so let's say I grab a section here. So I want to send the 808 into a saturator. So am I going to send a duplicate of the 808? Because that's what sending it would do. No, I'm going to add a direct plugin on top of the 808. Now think of it like this. Basically, in short, tracks are like kids, okay? And when you send a sound somewhere, it's like sending a kid on a school bus. So think of a send as like a school bus, like a bus, like a school bus, I should say, not a send, but a bus like a school bus. You're sending your kid onto a bus, and then that bus has to go to a school. So the school is the final destination for your send, okay? So in this case, we're gonna put the saturation directly on the 808, okay? In this case, we don't want to send the duplicate anywhere else. Whenever you send a signal out, you're basically just duplicating the signal and sending it somewhere else. Right now, we want the saturation to be directly on the 808. The reason I'm using saturation is because this adds color to the tone. I'm going to exaggerate so you guys can hear. Okay, so now it goes. Okay, now most people don't use tape correctly. So what you could do is turn the drive up, but then let's do this. Let's turn the mix up. Now, what a lot of people overlook is the input gain and the output gain. To make tape really create those saturations, we wanted to push pretty heavily into it. So in the bottom left of this plugin, we have what's called the input gain. So I'm turning up the input going into the saturator. Sometimes people don't push hard enough into tape plugins and it won't create the effect. So tape is a great example of pre and then post. Input gain, output gain. So what we're going to do is boost the input gain and then turn down the output gain. So the input gain will give me more of the effect. The output gain is just turning it down. We don't need it to be super loud. So as I crank the input gain, you're going to hear more and more of the effect. That's on like. Okay, now if I left this normal, it would be super loud. turn that output gain down. So this is a perfect example of what happens between input gain and output gain. You could do the same thing with compressors. Monitor the gain going into a compressor. This is gain staging, monitoring the gain going into a compressor, and then turn down the output so that you're creating more of the effect, but at a lower volume or higher volume, whatever you choose. Okay, so now we have this effect, but it's at the same level, pretty much. Okay, so that's the first thing people need to understand is how to go into plugins. A lot of people are either too loud going into a plugin or they're too quiet, and the plugin doesn't do anything because it doesn't have enough signal. Okay, so now I want to send this 808 to a school, quote unquote school. So we're going to send this child or kid, the 808, to a metaphorical school. Okay, so let's put it on a bus. We need to put the 808 on a bus. Let's go to where it says send, where we can send our track to a bus. Let's send it to bus number 1 and 2. We're going to do stereo because most the effects you're going to be using on bus aux inputs are stereo effects. Okay, so right now we have to send a percentage of the kid. This is where it gets weird. Okay, we're going to send a percentage of the kid somewhere. So I can determine how much of the signal goes out to that school. Okay, so let's create the school. Let's hit Control-Shift-N in Pro Tools. Let's make a stereo track. And we're going to make this an aux input. Now I'm going to create a creative. I'm just going to call this creative. Okay, so on this track, I'm going to create chorus and maybe some high-end saturation. We'll see. So let's create this aux input. So this is the school. This is the destination. So let's go to the input, and we need to tell the school that it can receive all the kids from bus 1 and 2. So let's go to bus 1 and 2. You'll never forget what buses are and how to use buses after this example. So in order for me to send the signal from 808 to creative, I have to send this metaphorical kid under sends to a bus, and that kid will take the bus and go to school. Okay, so now the school has to input or import the buses in order to get the kids from the bus. Okay, and let's open up a plugin on this creative track. Let's open up Air Chorus. Now the last step is we need to send a percentage of that metaphorical kid to the school. So let's send the kid to the school. So the more I use this, you click where it says bus, click here, it opens up a fader. The more signal you send through the fader, the more signal goes to the school. So a good way to do this is like reverb. I'll show you with the vocals. But basically we can tame the effect by just pulling this down or pushing it back up. And again, if you go pre, you're going to bypass all the other faders involved. I don't use pre a lot, so I'm just going to keep it normal. Okay, so let's send the vocal as a child, metaphorically, to bus 3 and 4. Now, bus 3 and 4 is going to go to a different school. So let's open up a new aux input. Let's hit Control-Shift-N. Let's go to stereo. We're going to make this an aux input, and let's call this reverb/delay. Now, at this school, I want the kids to be processed a different way than if they went to creative school. So on the reverb school, I want to send the kids through mod delay as if it's like a class at school. And I also want the kids to go through deverb. Okay, so let's open up deverb. Very common for people to run these. Oops, click D50. All right, whoops. I have to click deverb. Hopefully this doesn't take too long to load. So what we're going to do is send a duplicate of the vocal to this metaphorical school. Okay, so let's load up deverb this time. Now I'm glad I did that. Let's send this metaphorical child, the vocal, to bus 3 and 4. Nothing's happening because we didn't input, okay, bus 3 and 4 to that school. So let's go to input, switch this to bus 3 and 4. So now we'll be able to hear it. Okay, so I'm going to use this fader to determine how much delay, because this delay is pretty upfront. Because it's too big, so I'm going to turn down the fader. So now you can barely tell there's delay, and that's how you use the fader. It's almost like a mix level. Okay, so nextly, let's open up Dverb to make this a little bit more realistic. And we want the stereo plugins because this is, okay. So even if you come from a mono track, I send my sounds out stereo. Okay, and then I input stereo into the aux input. So now when I push this effect from the vocals, determining how much signal I'm sending from this child, metaphorical child, to the bus 3 and 4, we're determining how much of the child is going to that metaphorical speaker. But again, this is a duplicate of the original track. So always remember, whenever you're using sends, you're sending a duplicate of the sound over to somewhere else. And I'm using this fader to just turn that effect down. So now we can blend it in without it being overbearing. Okay, so let's say you want the reverb to feel like The Weeknd. I said that backwards. The 808 to feel like The Weeknd. You're going to send it to the reverb. So we have one school dedicated to chorusing, which is just widening out the sound. We have another school loading sounds through delay and reverb. Now, the reason I didn't add another aux input with just saturation is because I didn't want to duplicate the 808 and run it through saturation. I wanted the saturation to affect the entire 808. So I added saturation directly onto that track. Nextly, let's send the 808 as a duplicate to bus 3 and 4. So you can send your kid to multiple schools. Okay. Same way you can in real life. They get a regular school and then after school stuff. So bus 3 and 4 is going to go to the reverb and delay. This is going to widen it out. Let's change out the saturation type. So see how we changed the saturation type and now the volume's just super loud. Okay, so we need to change the settings and then redo the gain staging on this. Because that wasn't using harsh drive. Harsh distortion, I should say. Now we're getting a bigger sound like The Weeknd. Okay, so let's say you don't want saturation this heavy. We can pull back the mix level in this case for this specific sound. Okay, but now that 808 is going through reverb. Now you can swap that out for any bass sound, not just the 808. So let's turn off all the plugins. Here's before. Let's do a quick before and after. Here's before. Here's after. So you're just making it bigger by sending a duplicate to different effects. And now we're adding all these effects together. We're not adding the effects directly onto this track. This is a way to share effects with different elements, but also to control how much of the effect goes on it, the sound. Now you may ask, okay, I like the sound, but how do we turn it down? So here's where we go into the mix window, in my opinion, and then use the fader. So right now it's going through all these processes. Let's just turn down the output. Now, if you have what's called under options, if you have what's called pre-fader metering, you're always going to see the original signal. So turn that off if you want to see the ending. So here's the real level after the processing. Now, if I turn that pre-fader off, pre-fader metering, it's going to say that the 808's way up at 10 dB, but that's before it gets processed. I should say before the fader. Okay, so I'm not like mixing this entire track. I'm just showing you guys different things. So let's send that vocal. Let's say I want some elements of the creative school onto my vocal. Let's send that kid to creative school. So let's go to send the kid to bus 1 and 2, and that bus 1 and 2 goes over to creative school. And now we're gonna use this fader to send a different portion of the kid over there. So here's the chorus effect. And now I can use this to blend in that effect. Okay, so let's create a new aux input. Let's hit Shift Command N, in this case on Mac. Let's go to stereo. We're gonna go to aux input, and let's say we want to create like a parallel saturator or like a parallel compressor / saturator. Okay, so we're gonna create a new aux input that's stereo, and now we're going to do different things to the sound. So firstly, I'm gonna load up the real tape to create the saturation sound. This is a built-in Pro Tools effect. Let's go to real tape saturation. Okay. And then after that, remember plugins go from, top down. So this is listed A to E. Okay. It's listed A to E. So the inserts go from top to bottom. So here it's going to start with the saturator, and then we're going to move it into a compressor. I'm going to move it into the smack compressor because it's very aggressive sounding. And we can also add more harmonic content in that compressor. We're going to use the stereo version. All right, now remember, tape needs heavy signal for it to process. So what I'm gonna do is send the vocal over to this channel. This mute. Actually, let's send the instruments. Okay, we're gonna send the instruments on bus 5 and 6 because now this new school needs a new bus. So let's go to bus 5 and 6. Okay, we need to tell bus 5 and 6 which school to attend. We're gonna go to the parallel saturation school. Go to bus 5 and 6. Make sure the bus arrives at the school. Okay, and now I can use that fader from the instruments channel track and send more or less of the signal. Let's mute the other stuff in the background. So now I'm sending signal to be processed over to the parallel aux input. So I'm going to crank up some of these settings. Now the input drive is going to go up, and it's also going to increase the volume. But I don't want the volume to increase. So let's lower what's called the output. I just want that zzz, zzz, zzz sound of the tape. Okay, so tape needs a lot of signal sometimes for it to really push that level. So I'll turn it off by pulling this fader down and then push more and more of the signal using the send. Hear it crunch. And now you can use this fader as a way to create more or less crunch going into the tape. Now from there, we're gonna compress pretty heavily. Now the compressor, in order for it to work, needs a lot of pushing into this compressor because it has a pre-built threshold. So we need to push heavily into this compressor for it to start really working, which means more input volume. Okay, so now if I want to create less of that effect, I just go to this, the send amount and just pull it down. If I want more of the effect, I turn this up. And now the sound feels nice and full. Now you could do the same exact thing with your vocals, for example. So let's send the vocals to 5 and 6. You know what's coming, Sally, what you did. Okay, so you can send one track to multiple buses to different schools, metaphorical schools. So let's turn this up on the vocal. Again, this is not a mixing tutorial. I'm just showing you different ways you could use sends. Okay, so in that case, it makes the volume, it makes the vocal too loud. Okay, so I'm showing you guys different ways. Now, another thing, this is kind of more when you get into bigger projects. Let's say you're working with an acoustic project and you have a whole thing of drum recordings. You can group sounds pretty simply. Just go to the left side where it says tracks. If you don't see this, click the little arrow right here. That little arrow will show you all these tracks to the left over here. Okay, so what we're gonna do, let's say we wanna group, let's group the beat and not the vocal. So let's group the beat tracks, hitting shift, left click to highlight these, and then we're gonna right click, move to a new folder. I like to use routing folders so that I can add plugins to them. Okay, so we're gonna use stereo routing folder, and I'm gonna call this beat. So now I'm grouping all the beat tracks into one group channel where we can add more effects. Okay, so you'll see here, it'll give us a little indicator. So now on this beat, let's say I want to process everything in the beat all at once, like a clipping, for example. Now I can load up one clipper plugin and it affects all of the sounds within this group. Okay, so let's go to K-Clip. And this group then goes to the master output. I'll show you guys how to create a master fader. I don't think we did that yet. So now I can clip the beat without clipping the vocals and the beat. So now the beat gets more aggressive and the vocal stays the way it is. So this is how we separate things. Again, this is not a mixing tutorial. I'm just using this for a demonstration. Okay, so nextly, let's hit Control Shift N. Let's create a stereo master fader. Now, in the master fader, this is what people call mastering. Okay, when you add plugins to this fader, it's affecting everything in your entire mix. Now, from here, you could either visually just do it here, but I'd like to go into the mix window and just visually kind of look at it this way. So you can move tracks around. So let's move that to the right. I like to put my master kind of out of the way. So usually for video, I load up an L2 on the master just so that you guys can hear me more clearly. So let's add an L2. L. Taking some time because we got a lot of plugins here. Okay, L2 stereo. Here we go. So now I'm going to just pull the threshold down and this will make my voice a lot louder so I don't have to scream for you guys to hear me. But this, again, remember, this affects all of the tracks. And then if you want to touch up on stuff like maybe that's too much chorusing, maybe that's too much, you know, parallel compression, you could just go back to your send amounts and just turn it down. Show me what to, show me what to. I don't know if I can lie. I know you'll be right. You know. Okay, and this is where you can add your imaging plugins. You guys have seen mastering. Again, this is not a mixing and mastering video, but here's where I would usually add the imaging because this affects all of the sound. Okay, this section here. Looks like the project's getting a little dense, so it's taking a minute to load plugins here. So we're going to type in Imager. Ozone is my favorite imager outside of the SSL imager, but I don't have the SSL plugins anymore. So we're going to load up Ozone. Any day now. So I think because my buffer length is so low, we're loading up a lot of plugins here. As you can see, There we go. Goodness gracious. So that's why I don't like to get into mixing mode, because you need more audio buffer space. Okay, so the screen's going like that because the audio buffer length is too low. But that's pretty much it as far as what happens in the DAW. The main thing is, the only time you're really going to worry about the volume before something is compression and saturation. Okay, so if you guys don't go heavy enough into saturation or tape plugins, you're not going to get the sound of tape. And sometimes you're going too heavy into compressors, so you need to pull back the volume going into compressor. That's where you would use the clip gain volume. Okay, really quick volume adjustment like that can help with your levels going into different plugins. So I pretty much covered the basics of signal flow in Pro Tools. If you guys want Pro Tools intro, it's completely free. Click the link below. Shout out to you guys. Go to busyworksbeats.com. Peace.